live. Good morning, Creative Life. You were just treated to, what would you call that?
Native American style flute.
Native American style flute from Christina. Native American style. I once heard it called wolf. What did he call it? Wolf calling? When you just play? So, thank you very much. That was beautiful. And I'm not Danielle. Danielle woke up yesterday feeling not so hot, so she decided to stay home. But she is online with you guys, so please say hi to Danielle online. We are in that era where if you don't feel good, please stay home. The rest of us don't want it. So thank you very much, Danielle. We love you, we miss you. I'm keeping your spot warm. I'm debating whether I need the glasses or not. I don't think I do. So I'm going to welcome you into this beautiful, brisk winter morning, because we get, what, a minute of fall? Mm-hmm. The trees have been changing. It's beautiful out there. But I want to welcome you into the inner healing experience by inviting you to take a nice deep breath. Just breathe it all the way in. And as you release the breath, relax. Get comfortable in your chair. Take one more nice deep breath all the way down. And as you relax, be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin the inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, and let my words act as your own for your own inner acceptance and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge.
I acknowledge.
Acknowledging the higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of the infinite presence, I simply speak these words. I surrender.
I surrender.
Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and that the feeling of heaven. I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understandings, now I say, I forgive.
I forgive.
Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow the higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only constructive, positive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon the divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose.
I choose.
I now center upon that one spiritual idea that I am willing to accept as real for me in this coming week, visualizing the idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words, I accept. Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release.
I release.
Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me, a family member, a friend, a mentor, who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who's not physically present in the room this morning. And I turn to that image in mind and say, I am grateful for the good in your life.
I'm grateful for the good in your life.
I now open my eyes to the world around me and turn joyfully to the person next to me or on this broadcast and share my gratitude and confidence by saying, I am grateful for the good in your life.
And now Mary and I are going to play an instrumental version of Ma Nabu, Hebrew song from the text of Isaiah. How beautiful are upon the mountains the feet of messengers of good tidings that publish peace, happiness, and salvation.
Thank you, Christina. And thank you, Mary and Jeffrey. Beautiful music. And the Isaiah passage that you cite fits right in with what I was going to imagine. Imagine this. Imagine this. So I want to see you, not this. All right, let me start with this. I'm going to read you something. This is from Ernest Holmes at Asilomar. No surprise there. This is the book we've been working out of for these 6 weeks now, I think. We've got 3 more to go. He says, our religion is a mystical religion, but it is not a religion away from the earth. It is a religion where the grass grows, a religion that no longer separates physical, mental, and spiritual, but finds action and reaction and actor, one and all, the same thing, and here and now. No mysticism, no news from heaven. Hang on to that thought. We'll come back to that. And the only reason is that we can only bring news from our own consciousness. I don't care how much we strain or how much we know or how many answers we know, in such degree as you and I see something outside of that which is the thing we ought to be looking for in and at each other, we can have no heavenly discourse. So insofar as we look at something, have our attention drawn to something that we place outside of the circle of unity, to that degree we are separated from harmony. We're not separated from the unity. We can't be, but we're separated from the experience of it. And experience and consciousness are very similar terms in our teaching. They're almost interchangeable. You don't have something till you're conscious of it. You're not being something until you're conscious of it. Everything comes through consciousness, which is why we're working on consciousness rather than on form. We're not out to change the form of the thing as much as we are out to change the consciousness of the thing. Sure, we rearrange forms and we tweak forms, and sometimes we give them a complete overhaul. But mostly what we're doing is we're working within the self about how am I perceiving things. And there are very simple examples of this that I use all the time with you, like, is this a beautiful day or what? Well, most of us would agree that it is because we've got this list of things that comprise a beautiful day. But still, we're each having our individual experience of this day. It's coming at us through our consciousness. And if you're worried about something, if you've got a weight hanging over you, then it's not such a beautiful day. It's a day in a countdown of days until you have to deal with whatever it is, you see. So what we're seeking, I think, by and large, is liberation from the attachment to the idea that forms have their own standalone intrinsic meaning. All forms, rather, are relative. There is one absolute and countless relatives. The absolute is having an experience of itself by means of the relative for the purpose of conducting our awareness back to the absolute. So when we ask ourselves about growth, let's say, we look out the window and we have nature that goes through these cycles of growth and then dishevelment, in autumn, and then apparent barrenness in winter, and then the budding and the springing forth of life in the springtime, and then the flourishing in summer, and round it goes. And we say, well, I can take a lesson from that. That's good information for me. Most of us don't do that, I don't think. We look at nature and we ask, should I take an umbrella today? Should I wear a coat? It's very, very pragmatic, But if you look at nature for the lessons, you see that it's there. Nature is calling to you. It's the absolute. It's the absolute saying, here's some information you can use in a relative way. If you come here on Christmas Eve, which I hope you will, it'll be on the online platforms and stuff, but I'd love to see you here in the room. You could sit there at home with a candle, but that's kind of sad, frankly. I think you should, if you possibly can, those of you in the Houston area, and those of you not in the Houston area, you can still book a flight. There's still time. Okay, and you come down here and you hang out with us, you're going to hear a series of short talks given by 4 of us that have to do with the stages of life. And that's all I'm going to tell you about it, because we're still in the process of figuring out what we're going to do, but it's going to be wonderful. Let me tell you that. So you look at the stages of life. And you say, I can take meaning from that. This is another way that the absolute is expressing through the relative. When Jesus said, you must become as a little child to enter the kingdom of heaven, he didn't mean literally. You see, it's a metaphor. To be young is a metaphor. Not everyone is young in earth years, but youth is a spirit, isn't it? Youth is a feeling. Or being the grown-up in the room, as they say. That's an experience. It's a metaphorical thing. So we can look at the stages of life for some kind of guidelines about how to express the absolute in a relative way. And then you look at the sacred scriptures of the world, and they've got all kinds of literary devices they use, one of which is angels. And that's kind of what I wanted to focus on today, the angelic message. Because when he's talking about bringing news from heaven, that made my ears perk up, and I started reading, in Isaiah, and I started reading the Annunciation to Samson's mother, and I started reading about the Annunciation to Mary and to her sister prior, about the birth of John, the nascent John the Baptist was going to come along. And you find this throughout world spiritual literature, and you find it through a lot of secular literature as well. The idea of something has your number. Something has an idea for you, and it's seeking to communicate this to you. So the angels come, and the angels sing, and the angels announce. And throughout Scripture, they're warriors, and they're healers, and they have lots of roles. But announcing is the main thing they do. They come and announce stuff. An angel comes and announces stuff. And it says, I bring you a message. And it's written, like a lot of us read Scripture that has passed through the hands of King James. There's a great book about them called God's Secretaries, the 54 people that King James pulled together to create the kind of pinnacle of the Protestant Bibles. So you read it in that languaging, and it's very formal, and it's beautiful, and it makes great libretto, But the angels come and they announce unto the shepherds, and they announce unto the countryside and various people, and they announce these things. Well, what is it they're announcing? Well, you notice that angels love them. They're great. They never, you know what they don't do? They never bring answers. And you want to sometimes grab them by the scruff of the robe, because they seem to wear robes, and say, I want answers. I thought you were an angel. They don't bring answers. They bring opportunities. They tell you that soon you're going to have an opportunity to express greater love. Soon you're going to have an opportunity to learn a great deal and pass that on to others. Soon everything in your life is going to be different than it is right now. And before you have a chance to inquire what they mean by that, they're gone in a flash of light. Well, angels are a metaphor. And I'm not saying, before you riot out there, I'm not saying they don't exist or they're bogus or any of the rest of this. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that they exist for everyone, including those who don't believe in them. Because they're a metaphor for something that happens to absolutely every one of us, which is the divine announcement of the oneness of all things, and you and I with all things, the unity of all things, meaning not just that we're all thrown in a heap as one, meaning that there's a divine principle that's threaded through all of us and every activity and every location. This is what angels come to announce. This is what they'll say. You're about to learn something. You have a destiny before you. And we'll say, well, tell me what it is. The angel would say, if they responded to that, they'd say, I don't know what it is. You're making it up as you go along. I can't tell you what your destiny is. We don't, it's not about predestination. Predestination is a problematic thing. I've never believed in it. But who cares what I believe? It's just, it doesn't seem logical, and that's why I bring it up. Is the predestination that your whole life is laid out before you. Then why do you need to live it? If it's already kind of been done someplace, how unoriginal is that? How boring is that? That you're just, And so it means the only person that gets to be surprised is you, okay, at the twists and turns in your life. And that on some level, something's watching you, saying, like you're passing through a maze, you know. Well, they're going to turn right, and then they're going to turn left, and then they're going to get confused, and then they're going to fall down, and then they're going to pick themselves up. But no, how it really seems to work, and you decide for yourselves, is that we make it up as we go along. We touch base with something. We return to something. This is what I got into last week with you, you know, that we go back to a place of knowing of our oneness with the divine nature, not just with each other. With each other's great, not just with this nature. That's wonderful too. But with the divine nature, which encompasses all of it, including that which has not yet come into form. All form plus all potential. That's the divine nature. It doesn't get any bigger than that. Its description is infinite. And this is what we touch base with, and it gives us the strength and the power and the wisdom and so on to make the choices that we do as we forge our own destiny. Where do angels come in, or where does the angelic announcement come in? Typically when we've fallen a little asleep at the wheel. Something will say, wait, remember? Look, no matter how creative you are, how successful you are, at whatever it is you do, how famous you are at whatever, there are times when you work, you're kind of running on fumes. You know, you're sort of doing the same thing. I saw some cocktail napkins. I was going to buy them for here, but they're kind of not appropriate. And it also used a vulgar word, which I'm not going to repeat on camera. But it was like a small napkin for, well, cocktails or coffee, I guess. And it said, "Here we go again. I mean, good morning." You'd probably imagine the word, but anyway, here we go again. I mean, good morning. And they're funny probably to pass out in offices and stuff, you know, and sometimes we get into that. Here we go again. You know, I'm doing all of this stuff, and I'm doing it right, and everything's fine. And everything's fine. And I'm making enough money, and my health is good. My relationships are wonderful, and so on. And still it's like one more day of checking off the calendar. What you need right then, what I need right then, because I go through this too, what I need right then is an angel song, where something appears around me, and it says, "For behold, this day is born within you your own salvation, which is the recognition and the remembrance of whence you came and whose you are and what all of this really means and what we're really working toward here, you and your source and all of us together as a society, what we're really working toward here. You get, and I got to say this again, I know I bring this up like 4 times a year at least. Dr. Kathy Ann Lewis is one of my favorite teachers of science of mind. She's in Seattle and has been for years. She has, I think she said this, and if she's out there, she'll correct it, but I've attributed this to her for years because it's just great. She says that life is like a jigsaw puzzle, and we come to places like this to have another look at the box. Life is like a jigsaw puzzle, and the angel sings in your ear to say, look at the box. Look at the grand design. There it is. It's not finished, but it is perfect, and it is total, and it is just a gem of a thing. And now it requires this next step on your part. What is it that you choose to do? And this is what, and so when the angel Gabriel came to Mary and said, you'll have a child, and you call him, he shall be called Emmanuel, God with us. It's not the name she gave him, but it's a name he was known by, and it was the idea of the messianic development within Judaism that was expected, that some Jews accepted and took from there into forging Christianity. It's just God within you. So when the angel comes, Mary is left with all these questions. But wait. Foremost among which is, I have not known a man. How is this supposed to? And the angel, you can picture the angel just kind of, I don't know. I just work here. I'm just bringing a message. You know, I don't know how all of this is going to play out. So you have a big idea for your life. You want to do some great thing. And you ask the universe, so how exactly is this going to happen? The universe says, I don't know. But you'll meet people along the way, and you make choices and discoveries and all of this, and somehow or another it will fall into place. And that's part of the thing. Here's another example of this. When you want to know something, and you pray to know it, you don't get to know it. You get to learn it. You get to learn it. We don't ask for wisdom, and all of a sudden, ding, we're wise. You know? It's no, you get a process. You get a process. Holmes says, to the confusion of many, there is no process of healing, but there may be a process in healing. And what he means by that is that the divine nature doesn't have to go through some ordeal to create a healing outcome. Okay? It doesn't have to rewrite its own rules and stuff. But at the same time, there is pretty much always a process in healing. A process just as like there is in your body, or there is in healing a relationship. And it involves aspects that are outside your direct control. You don't know how to make this happen. If you cut your finger, like he did, as a matter of fact, if you cut your finger, he's not listening right now. If you cut your finger, I don't know how to make that well. Nobody knows how to make that well, but there's this intelligence in the body that's rushing toward that place right now with all sorts of nutrients and healing properties and enzymes and whatever is necessary, as well as there are people around the periphery who know how to clean that area and set that area and tend to it and do what they do, you know. There's an awful lot that we don't know. And Holmes, in his writing, he details this beautifully. He said, we don't know how to digest food. We don't know how to circulate blood. All sorts of really vital things for us we don't know how to do. But there is something that does know, and that's the divine nature through us that created the body that we wear, that created the nature that body moves around in. So back to these angels. These angels come to us as epiphanies. They come to us as these great breakthrough ideas, but they leave us to our own devices to learn. And as I talked about last week, this is a time, Advent in the Christian world is a time of waiting and preparation. And the preparation is to figure out what is my next step given this blinding glimpse of insight that I've had from the angelic realm. Now, we are also in the midst of Hanukkah, and Hanukkah is a time that you read about it, and a lot of times people say, well, you know, it was when the Syrians were defeated. They had occupied the temple, and this light burned for these extra days in this cruet, and this was so that the Jews could worship. No, it wasn't so that the Jews could worship. It was so the Jews could clean the temple in preparation for worship. And that's the metaphor. It wasn't so, hey, we can have a party, the lights stayed on. It was so everybody could do their work. The ritual purification. It was a ritual purification. It was also an actual purification because the Syrians had left the temple a mess, as occupying people do. When people come in and they occupy a space, it's not their space. They don't care about it, and so they leave filth, you know, lying around. And it had to be cleaned up, and then it had to be sanctified for services to be held, for worship activities to be held. What is this reminiscent of? The self. The self. The lights stay on so that you can keep doing your work and I can keep doing my work of what? Forgiveness, letting go of resentments, letting go of regrets, letting go of the whole sense of separation, such as it is that we have between ourselves and the absolute. That's the miracle. And so whatever comes of that is a result of not deus ex machina, but it's a result of direct application of spiritual laws through repetitive practice, through our doing what it is we set out to do. The angels of our better nature, you've heard that expression before. The angels of our better nature, our higher nature, are the ones. You remember Goofy in the Disney card? He had a good angel and a bad angel. Good Goofy and bad Goofy sat on his shoulders, and he'd be faced with some kind of moral question, and they'd whisper things to him. Well, it's kind of like that for us. Is the angels of our better nature. It's like if I'm going to look at this world and bless this world, I have to be reminded that it's worth blessing. I have to be reminded that the same power made it that made my capacity to bless it. Same power made it that made the good that I seek, the personal, private good that I seek, that I think is important to me. One last thing as I wind down here. I told you last week about Emma Curtis Hopkins, some of her lines that turn up in this Holmes book. And there are various people that he quotes along the way. Well, I've been eating this stuff up. Now, Emma and I go way back. I've been reading Emma, almost 50 years now. But there was somebody he mentioned in this book. I had to hunt them down, and they're long gone off the planet. But I did snag one of their books, and I'll pass it along to you. I don't have the title in my mind here, but it's and I hate to put Lisa on the spot to find this with her flying gazelle-like touch on the keyboard. Herbert W. Eustace, E-U-S-T-A-C-E. It's something like Simplified Christian Science. He was a Christian Science renegade. He was part of the Mother Church, and then he went off and did his own thing. And he wrote this book. So I found this book, and been going through it, and it's got some great lines in there. And I had just a couple for you that Holmes brought up in his writing. The absolute is eternally giving the relative back to itself to play with. I already kind of gave you that one, but to play with. I love that. It's like, here, play with this. Now, you see, this is not a problem anymore. This is another dimension of the absolute. How great is that? Look at the things that to you were a delight until they became a hindrance. For example, your car. When you were a little kid and other people were doing all the driving and there were cars there, you thought they were the greatest thing ever, and you couldn't wait to get behind the wheel. Now you've had a car for a while, and you got to keep the oil changed, and you got to keep the tires this, and it's, and so some of the delight is probably drained out of that. But there's still a part of you that sees delight in it and would love to have that handed back to you to play with. Wouldn't it be great to be able to play with money? Wouldn't it be great to be able to play with your aging process, the clothes that you wear and the way that you carry yourself? Play with your own self-confidence and walk through the world that way. This is what the absolute conducts us back to, is the recognition of who we are without judgment and without the need to improve. It's been said, not by Eustace, but somebody else, that the universe does not look at you as an object of reform. As an object of, in other words, it doesn't stand as, you'll do, but a little more of this and a little less that, and let's punch you up a little. No, it looks at you and it says, you are my beloved, in whom I am well expressed. Eustace says you cannot become aware of anything unless it comes to you as consciousness. I've covered most of these already. You cannot become aware of anything unless it comes to you as consciousness, unless it comes to you through consciousness. With what other faculty would you be aware of it but for consciousness? If you see it with your eyes, consciousness interprets it. If you hear it with your ears, consciousness interprets it, tells you what it means. Where is language exchanged? Not simply through the ears. It's got to be understood, right? And every time somebody says a word, there's an image that accompanies it in mind. He says no kind of wholeness comes out of a fragment. Now think about that and carry that around with you this week, that if I've got something that I perceive as being separate from the all, I'm not going to be able to extract the all from it till I put it back where it started, till I put it back where it came from as an expression of the all. You see, if I regard something as just a crumb kind of off the table of the infinite, it stays crumb-like until I decide to reunite it with the fuller aspect of its own being. And then he says this. He says, spirit alone stimulates or soothes as required. So back to these angels one last time. They bring tidings of comfort and they bring tidings of joy, except when they don't. Sometimes they bring tidings in between comfort and joy. When you're hurting, when you're grieving, they run to you and they sit there and they comfort you and they tell you it's all going to be all right. But when you're not grieving, you're just moping. Maybe they come to you then and they say, get up. Here's some exciting news for you. They don't make you wrong. They don't beat you up. You know, they're not angry with you. Let's lose that whole idea that God or any of God's agents are angry with us and this. But they can get, I guess, a little bored with us, just as we get bored with ourselves. And so these energies come to us and they say, you know, here's something you haven't thought about in years. Why don't you take up this? Why don't you do, here's this wonderful thing. Here's this wonderful thing that you could possibly do. I think of all the musicians that I know or know of, many that have passed through this place over the years and others out there who were driving to school. I remember one in particular. He said, I was driving to school. I was in high school. I was driving to school. Another day in high school. You think, if you remember high school, you think it's never going to end. It's never going to end. You're going to finish 4 years. They're going to add on some more. It's like penance. It's, it's detention or something. He's driving to school. He turned on the radio. He listened to a song. He heard a song. Everything changed. He said, if I could do anything in this world, I would play music like that person coming out of my dash. He was listening to James Taylor, as it happens. And his name, the guy I'm telling you about, is Michael Mandrell. Grew up here in Houston. And he said, I listened to James Taylor. He said, everything changed. And to this day, Michael Mandrell is a professional musician because of that, you see. And so what happened was, I think, back in those days, because I remember these days, there were 3 rock and roll stations. There were 3 stations on AM radio that were likely to be playing a James Taylor station. Something may have turned the dial for him that day, saying, you need to hear this. All of a sudden, and it wasn't a song that was new to him. He'd heard it many times before. You see how this works? That's a tiding of joy. That's a tiding of joy. But in order to fulfill that dream, as is true for all of us, whatever it is we're doing, in order to fulfill that dream, he had to learn to play the guitar. He had to do, you hear me talk about this all the time, not because I have nothing else I can come up with, only because I have nothing better that I can come up with, is the idea of picking up the thing and devoting the time and going through even the actual physical pain to learn to play the guitar. Because on the other side of that was a realized dream. So this is what we're called to do at this Advent time. This is what we're called to do. Christmas isn't just this thing. It was for us when we were a child, where they wheel it into the room and it's all lights and presents and food, and then they wheel it all out of the room and school starts up again. You know, it's not something that's done to us. It's something that happens within us. It's something that happens within us. In the weeks to come, next Sunday, the Sunday after Christmas Eve in the morning, and then certainly Christmas Eve in the eve of it, we're going to look more deeply into this, the birth of the Christ consciousness as it occurs within the self, okay? So let's know together there is one life, one power, one presence, one principle, let's think of it now as one divine nature, which encompasses all of this, the principle and the presence and all the different aspects of it. One divine nature. And that nature, being a nature, sometimes it's quiet and contemplative and seems a little withdrawn even, and other times it's big and boisterous and loud, and it looks like an explosive sort of sunrise across the horizon. And it brings us comfort and it brings us joy, brings us tidings one way or another of something that is at the level of the absolute, and could be at the level of the relative, if we'll step up and participate, do what we do, and be who we are. And so in this time, I affirm and know that for each of us, there's a divine message being received, and then resounding through us out into the world as we repeat this joy. Repeat the sounding joy, says the song. We repeat the sounding joy. And we become these angelic expressions to one another. And someone flags in their efforts, and they weaken under their burden. We're able to say with them, to them and with them, with confidence and conviction, you have what it takes because you are what it takes. Something wonderful is happening through you right now. And it lights a spark in them. And it keeps their inner lamps lit long past the time when it seems they should have by nature been exhausted. It keeps them furnished with the fuel of consciousness to do that which ought to be done. And as we know, as each step is taken forward, it becomes easier. And other angelic expressions in the form of humans and others appear out of the ethers, substance, supply, materials, ideas. All of these become furnished as we build the new experience, the new heaven, the new Jerusalem here on earth. For this knowing and its manifestation in form everywhere we turn, I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into the infinite, calling it done, and so it is.
About ready. So let's all say together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is. And I guess we have more music.
And we have an angel now on harp. He's going to help accompany on this traditional Hanukkah song called Rock of Ages. Rock of Ages, let our song praise thy saving power. So when you feel you don't have your mojo working, there's a way to find it.
No, I am not Lisa. I will be doing the closing this today. So Jesse mentioned that napkin. My mother-in-law always woke up every morning with, "This is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it." And her day always went beautifully positive and lovingly. So I'm going to know that for each one of us today, knowing that in the oneness of infinite spirit, that divine love, that divine power that flows through each and every one of us, I claim and know that divine guidance, that angel's touch, that angel's nudge, if you will, that guides us to our highest and best each moment. And I am so grateful for that divine guidance that led me to this place, this teaching that opened my heart that much wider and more fully to the joy, to the love, and the peace, and a greater understanding of what life can truly be. And in the deepest of gratitudes, thank you, thank you, thank you, Infinite Spirit, as we each move through the remainder of this day and into this coming week, into the holidays and the holy days of each religion, however you celebrate. I know it is wonderful, it is peaceful, it is joyful, and so it is.
Say with me now, something wonderful is happening through me. I feel it in my body. I feel it in my mind. I feel it in everything I am. I choose it. I trust it. I use it. And I love it. And so it is.